Coogs house. It is NFL draft weekend, and the Houston Cougars have a streak in major jeopardy as the weekend begins.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. And we're enjoying the conversation, but you don't know what to say. Tell us what your favorite cheese is as the NFL draft is being held in Green Bay. Green Bay Packers fans, cheese heads. That's what I'm coming up with these days. I'm a big Munster person on a sandwich, actually. Anyway, today's show is brought to you by Amazon stuff we'll talk about later, but we got a bunch of stuff to get into today. I want to wrap up by talking some about the defensive backs kind of starting to stockpile with the Houston Cougars as they're trying to replace some major talent lost in that transfer portal. I want to talk some in the middle segment about kind of like some more about this TV dollar stuff happening in the college football playoff, and we talked some about it in the Big 12 squad, but I want to kind of pigeonhole that down to how it hits Houston specifically. But first and foremost, Houston has a streak in jeopardy, that streak being 9 consecutive years with a player taken in the NFL draft. Now, I got to say, frankly, as we look at this, I know 9 years is a long time. I also, I believe, the second longest streak in the state of Texas. A&M has a longer streak of like 17, but UT Austin's is less than 9. Baylor's is less than 9, right? It's not uncommon for schools to have a down year here and there in terms of the NFL draft. But on the whole, I also think that people are more or less not surprised that it's a down year in the NFL draft for Houston as they're in the middle of a rebuild. A lot of the younger talent on the roster is not draft eligible yet, still being developed. And frankly, Houston's been 4-8 2 years in a row. Not the best of things right now. I do think it's worth pointing out that Matthew Golden was taken 23rd overall by the Green Bay Packers in the first round on Thursday night. Yes, the same Matthew Golden that spent the first couple of his years as a Houston Cougar before ultimately transferring to UT Austin after Dana Holgorsen was fired. So obviously his clips were in the Longhorn uniform. It all said Texas, but it is kind of odd to see a guy that you and I cheered for a couple of years pretty devoutly, especially a kid from Klein here in Houston. And as you look at it, frankly, I believe there were 4 Houston area high school kids taken in the first round of the NFL draft Thursday night. I think we're up to like 7 at the recording of this podcast, like 6 or 7 Texas high school football kids taken, none of which went to the University of Houston. So feels like that's emblematic of the kind of struggles we've talked about and why you made a coaching change and all of that the last couple of years, right? But it's still like had Golden stayed, and I still kind of have some feelings that if Holgorsen had stayed, he might have. But neither here nor there. They made the right decision as far as the future of the program goes. Anywho, Golden being drafted feels odd because in the modern college football world, like you kind of want to claim part of that, but you can't. Frankly, all Houston Cougars looking to be drafted this weekend are looking like at late round kind of things. Donovan Smith, yes, the same Donovan Smith I talked to you about last summer as being a potential draft pick this spring, is still one of the higher draft grades. He's been kind of talked about more like an athlete, but he's in that 270 to 280 range. That's where you'll also find Maliq Carr and Keith Cooper. They're both, all three, really are between 270 and 300. Now, that does put them kind of at the back end if drafted at all. It only takes one team liking you to get drafted, obviously. I think each of these guys kind of offers interesting raw talents, especially when Donovan Smith's being talked about more like an athlete. When he is healthy, he can run hard. He's big, he's strong, etc. Maliq Carr, I think, is the most intriguing athlete. You think about the transition from playing some basketball to all football all the time. 6'9", big hands, long arms, big body, big targets. The more tight ends get used, I think the more you see that kind of transition happening. You could think about how like a late round pick is really kind of a developmental project for a pro football team. Does that mean that Maliq Carr gets drafted there and keeps the streak alive? I think there's a chance, right? I think Keith Cooper's most pro ready in terms of like on the field skill out of any of the Houston Cougars in the draft right now. I've been pushing for him to be playing on Sundays very soon. I don't know if he'll get drafted or not. I do think he ends up playing on Sundays, however that goes, even if he takes the undrafted route. Keith Cooper's really good. He's like a little light in the pants, as they say. He's just not very heavy, but he's 6'5", 285, and he's really more of an interior 3-tech kind of guy. They probably wanted to break 300, and that's a big deal at that spot. But from a technical skill perspective, he's great with his hands, great hips. He's really, really talented, and I think that that'll be kind of a big thing for him. For what it's worth, I'd also anticipate Michael Batten gets a post-draft camp deal. That doesn't help this streak all that much, but I didn't want to go without that being said. He lacks measurables, but he did have like 3 double-digit tackle games, really high PFF scores, great off-the-field character guy. And so I think you'll see that kind of all play a role as well. But as far as the streak goes, I weirdly kind of do think it matters when you're comparing Houston to other football programs in the state and talking to recruits. You're talking about this idea of potentially like comparing yourself to them in the eyes of a high school kid. And if you can say, listen, we continue to put someone in the pros via the NFL draft every year. These other schools you're looking at don't, right? That has to play some part at some point. It's not the end all be all, right? And ultimately, right, they're looking at themselves as a unique athlete comparative to everybody else. It's also the same reason I've always said it doesn't really necessarily matter if you win or lose a game of recruits at, depending on the kid. Every kid will be different as far as what they value. But I do think having things like this streak to tout can help remind a wider public what the Houston Cougar football program is and can be. We talk about this program all the time like it's a sleeping giant that is kind of slowly waking up, William Fritz being a big part of that. And in correcting some of the, tail end there of the program under the previous administration, you're trying to work forward and get things going in the right direction. Being able to kind of build off that streak and move forward would be a really, really big deal to me. And so I think that I am eyeballing this end of draft stuff on, the latter part of the NFL draft, looking at, does someone take a chance on Maliq Carr as a gigantic tight end prospect? Does someone take a chance on Keith Cooper as a technically sound, maybe a little bit, needs a different kind of meal plan and weight program, whatever, than somebody else would be? They take a chance on those guys late. Same with Donovan Smith as well. I think that's the 3 guys with the most likelihood as far as when you look at like what rankings and grades and those kinds of things are. And even there, those 3 are kind of pushing the envelope there at the end. But all that is to say that I don't think it's impossible. I don't think we have to forfeit the streak. I do, though, think it's going to be like pretty close there at the end of this. You could have 3 Houston Cougars taken in the final round, frankly, and that keeps the streak going. You get to keep talking about it, but there's just a chance, and we'll see where that goes. Now, other things are happening across college football as we kind of redirect ourselves back to college football. And so I want to talk some about the Heather Dinich report and some of the stuff we talked about in Big 12 squad with, again, refocusing it back to Houston. But before we get too far into any of that, I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Amazon Fire Stick TV. Did you know that Fire Stick TV can also be an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire Stick TV 4K devices. No console required. Just grab a paired controller. Subscribers sign into the premium Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. All those kind of things you're ready to play right away. Dive into hundreds of premium titles: EA Sports, College Football 25, Call of Duty, Black Ops, Avowed, any game. I'm learning more about the games as we go. Again, I teach middle school, so I hear about those kind of things a lot. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, all through the Amazon Fire TV. It's gaming made simple, all on that Fire TV with endless entertainment, 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribe services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and much more. Now, listen, we have the Fire TV on each of our houses. I love being able to flip back and forth between them. I love being able to speak into the controller. I love my toddlers learning how to speak into the controller when it's time to as well. Now, he still calls ball, or he still calls basketball ball when he speaks into it, but it's nice to be able to figure out those kinds of things on my Fire Stick TV and Fire TV as well. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and comparable controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube, the third generation. Parker Ainsworth Locked On Coogs here. And there's some big news happening across the world of college football. And we've talked about some of the Big 12 squad. I tweeted about it some throughout the week on social media services, Blue Sky some, Twitter some, whatever. But I wanted to kind of make sure we took a second, you and I, to talk about how this impacts the Houston Cougars. So if you missed the Dennis's report, right now, commissioners of power conference of all college football conferences are meeting as an NCAA to try and find a way to fairly pick playoff teams. And I should stress that as they're recording this podcast on Thursday night, no confirmation of any decision has been made yet. Dennis was very quick to point out after talks broke on Thursday that not only had they not made any decision yet, they weren't even going to start talking to the public about the House settlement. Just wanted to focus on the CFP. Brett Yormark told Dennis specifically that there was no decisions and that the process continues. The big deal here is in trying to, quote, fairly put together that college football playoff. You've got some heavy hitters, the SEC and the Big Ten, that want to ultimately, right, have automatic bids. And so they're trying to find, if you're asking me from my honest opinion, those two conferences are trying to find ways to have as many automatic bids as possible without having to work for them. They don't want one game samples. They don't want potentially, risk this. They want guaranteed money from having a bunch of teams in this college football playoff tournament. And honestly, it sounds like everyone else is kind of fighting this uphill battle against them. They had come through a bunch of different ways to figure it out. And it kind of put some big metric together. And I think the thing that took everyone by shock throughout the week that we talked about on the Big 12 squad is one of the aspects of that metric included TV ratings. Yes, TV ratings, as in how well your team's audience shows up to the television. And I thought a lot about this throughout the week, like how little sense that makes as far as creating a competitive thing. The college football playoff is a TV product, the same way it's an adjustment to the BCS not being good enough of a TV product, I guess. And it's just a new way to figure out the champion. We seem to change that every so often in college football. A big picture every so often, I should say, 30, 40-year kind of things. But I think it's madness because that's the SEC and Big Ten stealing bids without admitting they're stealing bids, because the TV ratings are not entirely, but the average person in college football watcher is turning on a basic channel or ESPN at a convenient time on a Saturday afternoon or evening, if not both. And the way to get to those spots would be to be the game on the main ESPN channel or the main ABC channel or the main CBS channel or the main Fox channel or whatever at those times. The Big 12 is fighting for more spots in those times, and the Big 12 has signed a good deal and will sign a new one in 2030. And it's interesting because the TV ratings will be ESPN dictating who's in the college football playoff, because they'll have a say in who will be in those TV slots because it's made for TV products. They get to determine who's at least at what time slot, and certainly who's on which channel at those times. That's how we talked yesterday about Houston getting another game bumped to a non-Saturday game for TV purposes, right? The Pac-12 tried to do that to save itself and fell apart. The Pac-12, I would not mimic anything they did across landscape because the conference fell apart. Now, it's not the only reason that the conference fell apart, but it is a thing that happened to a conference that fell apart. And anyway, as you look at like what's going to happen that Saturday after Houston plays at Oregon State on a Friday night, you're going to have an SEC game of the week. You're going to have SEC and Big Ten games up and down the slate on Saturday. And you're going to have, frankly, a bunch of big-time matchups, I'm sure, and it'll be good college football and be fun and entertaining. But then those good TV numbers are going to theoretically play a role in getting some of those schools into the college football playoff potentially. And then the argument's going to be made that, well, it's better for the playoff because more people will watch it. Look, I said at the start of the segment, I think that this is somewhat admitting that the college football playoff is a made-for-TV kind of spectacle. But the way that this hurts Houston is it continues to create a hole that it just feels like you can't ever completely dig out of. Yes, I can see you in the comments now. If Houston would just win, they could fix all of this. But we've seen teams in not the SEC and not the Big Ten win a lot of games and get left out. Miami just had the number one pick in the NFL draft and, was just barely missed their conference title game, the American Coastal Conference, the ACC. I almost said AAC, the ACC. And thus they were left out of the college football playoff with an electric playmaker at quarterback. You want to talk about TV ratings? Come on now. And I'm not saying that Miami should have been in, but if they were going to be in, whose spot are they taking, right? And moreover, if the same thing happened in the Big 12, it could happen to a school like Houston that gets stuck with 4 games not on Saturdays. And say you have a really good year and you're like at the fringe of the conference championship game, or you get the conference championship game and lose on a last-second field goal. The winner gets in automatically, and you're kind of hoping for the at-large bid. And like, yeah, but you had bad TV ratings. Well, Houston's got bad TV ratings because you made them play on Fridays, and Fridays have worse TV ratings than Saturdays. And that's kind of how it goes, right? And so I think that this is where that potential spiral and snowball. I know people think that when it comes to off-season talk and TV dollars talk, I can get doom and gloom. But this is where that snowball happens, that you've got to find ways to dig yourself out of. And it's not a quick process. And the unfortunate thing in college football with the way it goes now is you kind of need quicker fixes than you ever have, because everybody's timeline in your program is potentially months, not years. And so, like, let's say Houston goes 10-2 this season, and let's say Connor Wegman has a player of the year in the Big 12 kind of campaign. They get to the Big 12 title game. They lose on a last-second field goal to Kansas State, Iowa State, and insert good team. That's not Colorado, because it's not going to be them. And that happens, right? And then Houston is waiting to see if they get into the CFP. Under a model with TV ratings, I can almost guarantee you they wouldn't be in. I would have to look at what else happened across the country and yada, yada, yada. But if you had a metric that included TV ratings and Houston's going to have 4 games not on Saturdays, they're not. That wouldn't work. That'd be a gigantic negative on their resume. Now, it's not finalized, and frankly, it seems like the kind of thing that I think in the Big 12 squad, Cody put very well is like, They're, asking for $1 to get a nickel. They're stretching it far to kind of ask for something simpler later, right? It makes the idea of an automatic bid system not feel so crazy. But it does hurt. And it's targeted to hurt schools like Houston. And I don't think it's something you just put your nose up at or look away from or act like getting upset about it on a random Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in April is irrational. Because it's not. Speaking of things that are not irrational, Houston's got some room to make up in their football roster, and they keep on adding DBs. So I want to make sure we talk about that a little bit. But first, Coogs House, Parker Andrew hosts a Locked On Coogs here, breaking all things Houston Cougars down. We've talked some about a major NFL draft streak with Houston Cougars being in jeopardy. We've talked some about TV dollars and the Big 12 and what that could mean for Houston. But let's talk about a more immediate future for the Cougs, and that is this upcoming football season. Houston got rocked a little bit where within about 24 hours with the spring game somewhere in the middle there, Houston lost two of the, you could argue, best 3 or 4 DBs at worst in the Big 12 to the transfer portal, and Jeremiah Wilson and AJ Halsey just last weekend. As long a week as that's been, that was just last weekend. Truly wild to think that that's only been a week. And so people are left scrambling, like what's Houston going to do? What answers are Houston going to have, et cetera. Now, Houston did sign Jesus Machado, the linebacker from Tulane, led them in tackles in 2023, I believe, before getting hurt, if I read my stats here correctly. And so you got to think that he's obviously a pretty sure tackle on that, knows Fritz and knows the culture and all of that. I think that's a big part of him coming to Houston as well. Missed 2024 hurt, but I think I've heard that he is, making a good recovery he's beyond the point he's supposed to be at this point in the recovery. But people are really a lot more worried about DBs, and so as we look at this, I think one thing to stress is it sounds like Keontae Scott is staying a Houston Cougar. I know that may not be revelatory to some, but when Zach Etheridge, the DB coach, left for Miami, it felt kind of like a sign that Scott was going to as well. Keontae Scott came to Houston from Auburn a year after Zach Etheridge came to Houston from Auburn. The two were very close. Keontae Scott had played his best football under Zach Etheridge at Auburn, had a down year without him, and looked like they were trying to rejoin. It looks like even without Etheridge, as of right now, I keep hearing that Keontae Scott is going to stay. That's a good sign. I have some other guys to keep an eye on as well. I'm hearing about this Keeney Parks guy. I think it sounds like he's liking what he's hearing out of Houston, and Houston is liking what they're seeing out of his video. That's a guy to keep an eye on over the weekend. Noah King is another one to keep an eye on. Noah King is a bigger DB than Keeney Parks. Keeney Parks, I should say, is a transfer from Wyoming. Had 7 pass breakups in 2024. Pretty good hand skills at the ball. And truthfully, I think he was a victim at Wyoming of being too good. His stats look low in raw numbers because the guys weren't open enough to throw to very often. A guy I'm really interested in, though, and it took me too long to get to him, is this Sacramento State guy that's coming through, Zelmar Vetter. Dude is gigantic. Plays corner, 6'3", $195 at Sacramento State last year. And this feels like a smoke and fire situation, as in where there is smoke, there is fire between he and the Houston Cougars. He's big and long and strong and makes up for maybe, he might not go 4.2 in the 40, but he makes up for with some size and length. Great stoner at the line as far as getting his hands on guys and press. I was incredibly impressed, though, for a 6'3", 195-pound corner that played at an FCS program previously. I guess I'm moving up soon in Sacramento State. Just in how fluid his hips and how fluidly he opened. Obviously, some of that's relative to competition, but it stuck out. It stuck out. He's really, really talented and the kind of guy that feels diamond in the rough-ish as far as what Houston's looking at. Now, Houston's also, it looks like, talking to some of the guys, Rook Brown and stuff like that. I think there's a real chance that you could see Houston actually have a deeper rotation of DBs than they've had in years past, and they play more guys. You might not have the AJ Halsey in terms of like raw talent, at least coming into the season. I kind of want to see how this staff develops guys, though, because like I said, like that Zelmar kid from Sacramento State, he's got some pretty natural tools, Zelmar Vetter. And so can you work with those kinds of things and see where those things take you? Now, I say all of that to say that the more you see DBs linked to Houston, you're probably also going to start hearing and seeing more DBs leaving Houston. Maurice Williams Jr., for instance, a kid that's got some swagger and attitude I've loved. He hit the transfer portal on Wednesday night. He was a high-end recruit from the Houston area that wanted to stay at home and play at home. But I want, you see stuff like that happening, and I wonder if they see how many DBs are coming in. Like, I need to go find somewhere where I can play. To this point, I think we all expected Maurice Williams to have seen the field a little bit more. Hadn't worked out for him. I hope it goes somewhere and shines. Like, he's a great kid, great attitude, great energy, and had great high school tape. Hadn't had a whole lot of college tape yet. I think he's the kind of guy that you're going to see blossom somewhere, and I mostly because I want it to happen, right? I think you're going to see a handful of DBs, though, saying how many guys they're bringing in for visits and be like, I'm not going to stay here anymore, and jump in the portal over the next, at this point of recording, less than 24 hours. They can put their name in and not announce for a couple days or whatever. That they don't have to announce publicly as soon as they put their name in. So we'll see how those kind of things go. But however the weekend unfolds, whether it's guys getting drafted and keeping a streak alive, or major decisions being made in college football and the college football playoff, or as guys sign with the Houston Cougars and choose to come be a player in the third ward next fall. We'll be following that each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day. Go Coogs.